Hello everyone and welcome back to another lesson video. Yesterday's lesson we introduced a new um, article and a new timeline about a social change or revolution that happened somewhere else in the world, and it was a little bit more recent than the civil rights movement. The one we were talking about yesterday was called the Arab Spring. It was a chain of revolutions and regime changes in the Middle East. It happened in 2011 and it is still going on now. Y'all may have heard of the countries Syria, Libya, um, Egypt. Um, if you follow the news, they are mentioned quite a bit because the revolutions are still happening to this day. That was sort of the positives of how to create social change in today's day and age with social media, right? And how social media can really help us and make it easier for us to make a change in the world. Today, we're going to be introducing a new article called Small Change by Malcolm Gladwell, and it is going to be about sort of the negatives of social media when it comes to creating change in the world and how it actually is taking away from our ability to create change. Okay. Um, as always, complete your assignments that are being uploaded, right? Grades are due this Friday for your second progress report. What else? I will be uploading a major assessment grade today. It is 5 questions, 2 multiple choice, 3 short answers. It's over chapters 6 through 10 in the book. Okay. I think it should be pretty easy if you've been following along with the reading videos and the lesson videos. Okay. Um, it is a major grade, so please make sure you do that. What else is there to do? Um, if you failed a class first semester or the third 9 weeks, you signed up for a program called the Spring Accelerated Acceleration Academy. It's on Edgenuity. It's so that you can make up your classes without having to attend summer school. Remember to get that finished before May 21st, I believe, or you will have to attend summer school. Summer school will be from June 7th all the way to July 2nd, Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., right? Is a big time commitment. So please make sure you complete that academy. If you are a part of that academy, you still do have to sign up for summer school. And once you complete that program, you will be taken off that list for summer school, okay? But that's enough for the announcements. Let's get into today's lesson. The focusing question is, what strategies do people use to affect social change? We went into that yesterday of using social media, specifically Twitter and Facebook, to spread information, right? Um, Today, we're going to be talking about how social media is actually hurting us, and taking away from what social change and activism really is. And then the content framing question for lesson 19 is, what's happening in small change? That is the article I will be uploading in today's folder, which is 428, April 28th, okay? The learning goal, we're going to be able to describe Malcolm Gladwell's point of view on social media as a strategy for creating social change. His point of view is a very negative point of view. I may upload a discussion where y'all write one sentence stating Gladwell's point of view. Okay. So before we start, I want to introduce this picture as sort of like a background knowledge type of thing, because the article does mention these sort of protests called sit-ins. So this is during the civil rights movement. Okay. It happened shortly after they won the case for what is it? The what is it called? Brower versus Gale case, right? That we read about in Claudette Colvin. So this actually happened in 1960. So shortly after, a couple years after. So even though they ended segregation in buses and schools, there's still segregation in these restaurants and movie theaters and businesses, right? There's still like whites only and colored only, right? They're separated. So a lot of people took it upon themselves to go into these restaurants and sit in the white-only part of the restaurant and protest. And these were predominantly very peaceful protests, right? They were just sitting there. They weren't causing any trouble. They weren't yelling or doing anything like that. They were just sitting there saying, why am I not allowed to sit where I want to sit, right? Again, that goes down to the 14th Amendment of no laws or states can take away your rights or freedoms as a U.S. citizen, right? So this was in February 1960. This was the first sit-in that happened in America. 4 college students in Greensboro, North Carolina, basically started the revolution of sit-ins. So what they did, they went into a restaurant during lunchtime, and they sat down at the whites-only part of the restaurant. They were told to move, but they didn't move until the restaurant eventually closed, and they walked out. And they came back the next day with more and more people, right? More and more people kept on joining, which is honestly a very good thing, right? That means information is spreading. People want to fight back, but peacefully, right? They're taking it upon themselves to create change, right? And again, this gets mentioned in the article. Okay, it gets mentioned very early on. So what happens is it starts with 4 students, and then the next morning, 27 or actually around 30 students go in the next morning. Okay, so if it starts on a Monday, there's 4 students. Tuesday, 30 students go in. By Wednesday, I believe there's around 80 students. By Thursday, there's 300 protesters. And by Saturday, I believe around 600 people went to protest at this restaurant. And while they were protesting very peacefully, the white citizens in their city, I think this was Greensboro, North Carolina, were not peaceful in their reaction to it. They threw firecrackers at them like fireworks. They would drag them out. They would punch them. They would throw things at them, right? A very violent reaction to a peaceful protest, right? And here's a little YouTube video. It's not loading now, but should load for you. And I will put it in the 428 folder of some background knowledge, some information of actually one of the students that protested talking about what it was like, why they did what they did, right? So let's get into the article, small change. So it's broken down into 4 parts. There are 9 paragraphs. I shortened the article down quite a bit. And again, I will upload it in today's folder. So it's broken down into 4 parts. The first part is paragraphs 1 through 4. The second part is paragraphs 5 through 6. Third part is paragraph 7. It's a very long paragraph. And the fourth part is paragraphs 8 through 9. Okay. So the summary for the first part, paragraphs 1 through 4, is Black students sat at the whites-only lunch counter to protest segregation. Right, the 4 college students have been, started it, and then more and more students kept on joining. And the summary for the second part, paragraphs 5 through 6, is more and more people protested through sit-ins in Greensboro and other southern cities. So while it started in Greensboro, it spread to other southern cities. It went as far out as Texas, right? So it went from North Carolina all the way to Texas, and it was happening all throughout the South, right? It spread actually very, very quickly. I believe by the end of the month, I think they did this in February. By the end of February, people as far out again as Texas were doing the sit-ins as well. So as you can see, information, they didn't have social media back then, right? So this is sort of the opposite of what was happening in the Middle East in 2011. Because they used Facebook and Twitter to communicate with each other and spread information throughout, right? Information back then was still getting spread pretty quickly. In a week, people in Tennessee knew what they were doing, and they were doing it themselves. By the end of the month, people all the way from Texas knew what they were doing, right? Information was still spreading even though they didn't have social media, right? The civil rights movement is sort of known as the biggest form of protest and change in America's history. And they did it all without social media, right? They ended segregation or legal segregation without social media, right? And that's absolutely incredible. And that's basically what this whole entire article is about, okay? And as you can see, it slowly starts going from the sit-ins to social media. So for the summary for the third part, paragraph 7, is many people claim that social media has made a big difference in activism. And the Middle East protests actually gets mentioned in this one, about how a lot of people think social media was such a big reason that the revolutions and protests in the Middle East happened, or in activism in general, or creating social change in general. But the summary for paragraphs 8 through 9, the last part, is social media is not as important to activism as many claim. That's what Malcolm Gladwell sort of argues in this article, is that you don't need social media to create change in the world, because people in the civil rights movement were doing it without social media, and they were creating a lot of change. And he provides actually a lot of examples in paragraphs 8 through 9 of how social media actually wasn't that big of a part in the Middle East revolutions, right? He says for Twitter, they were saying how in the last article that Twitter was a big part of letting other people in the world know exactly what was happening in Egypt, in the Middle East. But Malcolm Gladwell basically says a lot of the tweets that were coming out about those revolutions weren't from people inside Iran. They were all from people from the West, like U.S., Europe, you know. So, they were from the West instead of Iran or the Middle East. So how are they knowing exactly what is happening over there whenever they're not even in those countries, right? So he provides a very good example of why were most of the tweets in English, right, and not in the language of Farsi, which is what they speak and write in the Middle East usually. Okay, so he provides a lot of examples, sort of countering the claims that social media is a big thing. Malcolm Gladwell sort of believes that social media is hurting activism and creating change, because nowadays people are all talk, right? People just tweet or post something on Instagram, and they believe that that's creating change instead of actually going out there and doing something to create change, right? So he basically, a good example is whenever the protests were happening, I believe in the summer, for the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of people would post these black squares on Instagram, right? It was called, I think, a Blackout Tuesday. And people would do that, and they thought they were doing something. But Malcolm Gladwell puts it as, you're not really creating change, you're just talking about creating change, or talking about that you want change, instead of actually going out there and creating it yourself. Because he basically says the civil rights movement was about people going out there and actually creating change, or demonstrating that they want change, and taking it upon themselves, being about the action instead of being talk. There's a good saying, their bark is bigger than their bite, as in they're all talk, they're not actually going to do something about it. So he's basically saying Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of that is making it where we think we're creating change by tweeting about it, or posting a picture, or going live, when we're not really doing anything. Like, you should be going out there marching, or demonstrating like the people in the past did. That's what activism is. That's what creating social change is, instead of just talking about it, right? And a lot of people think talking about it is a way of doing peaceful protest. These sit-ins were peaceful protests, right? The bus boycott was a peaceful protest. There are ways to create change, peacefully. You can volunteer, you can donate, you can sign petitions, instead of just tweeting about something that you want change, or tweeting about injustice. You can do both. You can tweet about it, and you can do something about it, right? That's basically what this article is about. And that's why he uses the paragraphs 5 through 6 to talk about the lunch counter sit-ins, because he's talking about something that happened in the past, in the 1960s, without social media, and how quickly information spread from North Carolina all the way to Texas when they didn't have social media, and people went out there and actually demonstrated and protested and did create change by doing what they were doing instead of tweeting about it or going on Instagram. Obviously, if they had social media and phones back then in the 1950s and 60s, maybe the civil rights movement looks different, right? We don't know. Maybe Rosa Parks goes on Instagram and goes live instead of refusing to give up her seat. But Malcolm Gladwell is basically saying you do not need social media to create change because people have already done it in the past, right? Without social media. So this is Malcolm Gladwell's point of view. He says the new tools of social media have reinvented social activism. That's what a lot of people think, right? That social media has sort of changed how we should create change or protest something or be an activist. So which quotes in fact support this claim? Which quotes in fact contradict this claim? So some of the quotes in this article that support that claim is that people call protests in Moldova the Twitter revolution. Another quote is, without Twitter, the people of Iran would not have felt empowered and confident to stand up for freedom and democracy. Someone from the U.S. government calls these Facebook activists the best hope for us all in creating change. And that's what paragraph 7 was mainly about, right? Was basically saying that these are examples of social media actually helping out. Some quotes and facts that contradict this claim come in paragraphs 8 through 9, the last part, right? So some quotes is, Malcolm Gladwell actually says few people in Moldova actually had Twitter accounts. So how is it called the Twitter revolution in Moldova when less than like 10% of the population had Twitter? Iranian tweets, all the tweets about Iran revolution was actually outside of the country. It was in the West, so it was not a Twitter revolution inside Iran. Right? So he actually refutes all of these claims. He actually goes against all of these claims that people are saying about social media being a very important part of creating change. And that's a very good thing to do in your argument essay, is showing the argument the other side is making, right? All the positives of the other side, and shutting it all down with evidence to basically say all that is wrong. Here's the real evidence, right? That's what you should always do in an argument, is show what the other side is arguing for and then show your argument with evidence and facts. Second question, does Gladwell agree or disagree with the claim that new tools of social media have reinvented social activism? He disagrees, right? In paragraph 8, he actually says the quote, "These are strong, puzzling claims." He basically says that quote, "The new tools of social media have reinvented social activism," doesn't make sense, right? He's basically saying, who cares what people are tweeting about? Who cares what they're posting on Facebook? Who cares what they're posting on Instagram? If they're not going out and actually doing it, what does it matter? He says social media has made it so we have forgotten what social change and activism really is. He says there's much more to activism than social media. So obviously he's not the biggest fan of social media, right? And that's basically what this whole entire article is about. And number 3, how does the structure of the first 9 paragraphs relate to the claim? We seem to have forgotten what activism is. So the structure of this article is very, very, very good. Malcolm Gladwell is a very famous writer. So obviously this article is going to be a very good piece of work. So he puts the argument that he disagrees with first before presenting his own argument, right? He supplies his own evidence or evidence that he found to support his claims and sort of shut down the other side, right? He introduces the success of sit-ins before introducing his argument. That sort of weakens the opposing claim of social media playing a big part because he's providing examples of people creating change without social media, right? He's making the other side seem a lot weaker with evidence and examples. Okay, that's exactly what you should do in an argument essay. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you understand what this article is about. Please read it. It's only 9 paragraphs. It is honestly not that bad, okay? So I am going to upload a assignment of basically just this learning goal of basically saying, write one sentence stating Gladwell's point of view, okay? But yeah, it should be a quick, easy discussion. I'm confident that y'all will do a great job at it. Let me know if you have any questions. If you don't, then get to work. I'm about to upload that major grade, assignment, assessment, whatever. But yeah, email me if you have any questions, message me on Schoology. But that is it for today's lesson video. And I'll see you here for the next one. I'm not going to upload one Thursday or Friday because I want y'all to catch up on grades. So I'll see you here next week. Bye.